An axe age, a sword age, shields are sundered. A wind age, a wolf age, ere the world falls. Nor ever shall men spare one another. This is the chilling prophecy as recounted in the Poetic Edda, a vision of a final, unsparing conflict. It is a verse that speaks to one of the most powerful and misunderstood narratives in all of mythology, Ragnarok. When we hear that word today, our modern minds often conjure simple images of a comic book apocalypse, a generic doomsday, or a climactic battle in a blockbuster film. But what was Ragnarok to the Norse people who conceived it? What did it truly represent in their worldview to know with certainty that their gods, their world, and they themselves were destined not for eternal paradise, but for a violent, preordained doom? To begin our exploration, we must first clear away the pop culture debris. Ragnarok is not a simple Armageddon, nor is it a story of good versus evil. It is, more accurately translated, the doom of the gods, or their fate. It is the culmination of a long, intricate series of events, of oaths broken and prophecies fulfilled. It is a story where the gods are not immortal, where their end is not just possible, but inevitable. And perhaps most importantly, it is a story where the end is not truly the end. In our deep dive today, we will navigate this grand, tragic saga by examining its complete life cycle. Our discussion will be structured into 5 key parts. First, we will establish the world as it was in its prime, the Norse cosmos held in balance by the world tree, Yggdrasil, and we will witness the moment Odin himself learns of the prophecy that seals its fate. Second, we will introduce the agents of this prophesied doom, the deeply complex figure of Loki and the monstrous children he sired, each with a specific, terrible role to play in the coming cataclysm. We will explore the pivotal crime that acts as the point of no return, the death of the shining god, Baldr. Third, we will analyze the inexorable signs that herald the beginning of the end. The Fimbulwinter, a 3-year winter that erodes all bonds of kinship, and the cosmic wolves that will finally devour the sun and moon. Fourth, we will provide a detailed, blow-by-blow recounting of the final cataclysmic battle on the field of Vígríðr, exploring the fated duels between gods and giants, Odin and the wolf Fenrir, Thor and the world serpent, Jörmungandr. And finally, we will explore the most crucial and often overlooked part of the saga, the new green world that rises from the ashes and the small handful of survivors, both divine and human, who are destined to begin the cycle anew. So, settle in. We are about to explore a mythology where destiny is inescapable, where even the gods must face their mortality, and where the end is not merely an end, but a violent and necessary prelude to a new beginning. This is the story of Ragnarok. Before we can comprehend the fall, we must first understand the structure that is to be shattered. The Norse cosmos is not a simple, linear plane, but a complex and interconnected reality, a grand structure held together by the immense spiritual and physical presence of a single entity, the world tree, Yggdrasil. Imagine, if you will, an immense ash tree, so vast that its existence defies mortal comprehension. It is not merely a tree in the universe. In many ways, it is the universe. Its roots delve deep into the unknown, drawing sustenance from mysterious wells, while its highest branches scrape the canopy of the heavens, home to beings of immense power. Yggdrasil is the axis mundi, the unshakable pillar around which all of existence revolves. It is a living, breathing entity, a microcosm of the life, death, and decay that define the cosmos itself. Within its boughs sits a great, wise eagle, observing all. At its roots, the dreadful serpent, Nidhöggr, gnaws relentlessly, a constant reminder of decay and destruction. And scurrying between them, up and down the trunk, is the squirrel, Ratatoskr, a messenger carrying insults and gossip, representing the strife and discord that exist even within this divine structure. The branches and roots of Yggdrasil connect what are known as the 9 realms, which we can loosely group into 3 distinct levels. At the very top, in the highest branches, lie the realms of the divine and the ethereal. Here we find Asgard, the mighty fortress home of the Aesir gods, a realm of order, strength, and warrior glory. It is here that Odin's great hall, Valhalla, stands, awaiting the souls of the chosen slain. Also at this level is Vanaheim, the home of the Vanir, a second tribe of gods associated with fertility, wisdom, and nature. And finally, Alfheim, the radiant home of the light elves, beings of beauty and magic. In the middle, clustered around the trunk of Yggdrasil, is our own world, Midgard, the realm of humanity. Its name literally means middle enclosure, and it was said to have been formed from the eyebrows of the primordial giant, Ymir. Midgard is precious, but also vulnerable, connected to the divine realm of Asgard by a bridge of shimmering ephemeral fire, the Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge. Guarding this bridge, ever vigilant, is the god Heimdallr. Also at this level are the realms of Jotunheim, the rugged, chaotic land of the giants, or Jötnar, the primary adversaries of the gods, and Svartalfheim, the subterranean domain of the dwarves, the master craftsmen of the cosmos. And finally, deep within the roots, lie the primordial and chthonic realms. Here we find Muspelheim, the land of fire, ancient beyond measure, home to the fire giants and their formidable ruler, Surtur. Opposite it is Niflheim, the dark, cold world of primordial ice, and most famously, Helheim, the realm of the dead, presided over by the goddess Hel, where the souls of those who did not die a glorious death in battle are destined to reside. This intricate cosmology, a world of radiant gods, striving mortals, crafty dwarves, and chaotic giants, all connected by the living wood of Yggdrasil, is the stage upon which our tragedy will unfold. In the beginning of this world, after its creation from the corpse of the giant Ymir and the ordering of the cosmos, the gods of Asgard experienced what could be called a golden age. This was a time of creation, order, and immense power. The master craftsmen, the dwarves, forged legendary artifacts for the gods. Odin's spear Gungnir, which never missed its mark, and of course Thor's hammer Mjolnir, a weapon of such immense power it could level mountains and was the ultimate defense against the giants of Jotunheim. The gods built the great walls of Asgard, establishing a bastion of divine order against the chaotic forces that surrounded them. It was an age of seeming stability, of confidence, presided over by a pantheon of gods at the height of their glory. At the head of this pantheon sits Odin, the All-Father. He is a figure of immense complexity. He is the god of wisdom, of poetry, and of kingship, the bringer of order and the chief of the Aesir. Yet, he is also the god of war, of death, and of ecstatic, shamanistic fury. His defining characteristic is a relentless, almost obsessive quest for knowledge. He famously sacrificed one of his own eyes for a drink from the Well of Mimir, the Well of Wisdom, granting him unparalleled insight. He hung himself from Yggdrasil for 9 days and 9 nights, pierced by his own spear, a self-sacrificial ordeal to discover the secrets of the runes. Odin's pursuit of knowledge is not for idle curiosity, it is driven by a deep-seated anxiety, a premonition that this golden age is fragile and that a great doom looms on the horizon. His wisdom is his greatest strength, but it is also the source of his greatest sorrow. His most famous son is Thor, the champion of Asgard and the protector of Midgard. Where Odin is cunning and mysterious, Thor is straightforward and indomitable. He is the god of thunder, possessed of immense physical strength, and is the archetypal warrior. Armed with his hammer Mjolnir, his belt of strength Meginjord, and his iron gloves Jarngriper, he is the god's primary answer to the physical threat of the giants. His popularity among the Norse people was immense, as he represented a more accessible, tangible form of divine protection. He was the god who fought the monsters, who kept the forces of chaos at bay and ensured the stability of the world. His eventual fate at Ragnarok is therefore one of the most tragic, as the fall of the greatest protector signals the fall of all protection. Standing ever watchful is Heimdallr, the guardian of the Bifrost Bridge. He is the embodiment of divine vigilance. It is said his hearing is so keen he can hear wool growing on a sheep, and his sight so sharp he can see for hundreds of miles. He requires less sleep than a bird, and stands as the sleepless sentinel of the gods. He possesses the great horn, Gjallarhorn, and when he sounds it, its call will be heard throughout all the 9 realms. This horn is a symbol of security, but it is a security with a known expiration date. For it is prophesied that Heimdallr will sound the horn only once more, not as a warning, but as a declaration that the end has finally begun. And representing the Vanir, the other tribe of gods who made peace with the Aesir after a great war, is Freyr. He is the god of peace, fertility, sunshine, and rain, all the things that make life prosperous and joyful. He is a symbol of the Golden Age's bounty. Yet his story contains a seed of tragedy that will bloom at Ragnarok. In a moment of profound love, he gives away his magical sword, one that can fight on its own, to win the hand of the giantess Gerda. This act of love, this prioritization of peace over preparedness, will leave him defenseless in his final, fated battle against the fire giant Surtur. It is a poignant illustration of a core theme in Norse mythology, that even the noblest choices can have devastating, unavoidable consequences. It is Odin, the All-Father, burdened by his wisdom and driven by his anxiety, who sets in motion the true beginning of our story. The peace of the Golden Age feels hollow to him, a temporary stay against a doom he can feel but not fully grasp. To quell this uncertainty, he embarks on one of his most famous shamanistic journeys. He travels to the underworld to find the resting place of a Volva, a powerful seeress or prophetess, long dead. Using his formidable magic, the incantations that can rouse the dead, he awakens her spirit from its slumber. The Volva is reluctant, her rest disturbed. "What man is this to me unknown, who has disturbed my long repose?" she asks. Odin, cloaked and disguised, does not give his name, but relentlessly questions her, demanding that she share her sight with him, that she speak of the beginning of the world, and most importantly, of its end. Compelled by the All-Father's power, she begins to speak. The prophecy she delivers is known as the Voluspa, the prophecy of the seeress, and it forms the backbone of our understanding of Norse cosmology and eschatology. She speaks of the dawn of time, of the void of Ginnungagap, of the creation of the giants, the gods, and mankind. She recounts the first great war between the Aesir and the Vanir, and the fragile peace that followed. She lays bare all of history, past, present, and future, for Odin to see. And then, her sight turns to the future, to the very threads of fate that Odin so desperately wishes to understand. She speaks of the death of the shining god, Baldr, an event that has not yet occurred, but which she reveals will be the ultimate trigger for the end times. She describes the binding of Loki in retribution for this crime. She paints a terrifying picture of Fimbulwinter, the 3-year winter that will grip the world, a time when all bonds of kinship will fail and humanity will turn on itself. She tells him of the sun and moon being devoured by wolves, of the great tree Yggdrasil groaning, of the serpent Jörmungandr writhing in the sea, causing catastrophic floods. She prophesies that the sound of Heimdallr's horn will echo through the realms. She describes the battlefield of Vígríðr, and one by one she recounts the fates of the very gods standing in their prime. She tells Odin of his own death, devoured by the great wolf Fenrir. She tells of Thor's victory over the world's serpent, only to fall to its venom moments later. She speaks of the world consumed by the flames of the giant Surtur, and of the final sinking silence as the earth disappears into the sea. The knowledge Odin sought became his greatest burden. He now possessed the full, terrible script of his own destiny and the destiny of his entire world. There was no ambiguity, no escape clause. He learned that his frantic quest for wisdom would not allow him to prevent Ragnarok, but merely to understand it. This grim certainty would hang over every subsequent action of the gods, transforming their golden age from a time of glory into a long, somber prelude to an inevitable twilight. And at the center of this web of prophecy and doom stands its most essential catalyst, Loki. It is impossible to discuss the fate of the Norse gods without understanding this deeply complex and pivotal figure. To label him simply as evil is to fall into a modern, dualistic trap that the Norse themselves would not have recognized. Loki is not a devil figure. He is something far more interesting and far more dangerous, an agent of pure, unbridled chaos. By birth, Loki is a Jotun, a giant, the sworn enemies of the gods. Yet, in his youth, he swore a blood oath with Odin himself, becoming the Allfather's blood brother and being granted a place among the Aesir in Asgard. This fact is critical. Loki is not an external threat, he is an internal one. He represents the unpredictable, disruptive element that the gods chose to welcome into their own ordered hall. He is the embodiment of the boundary crosser, the rule breaker, the one who introduces change and instability into a system that craves order. Throughout the myths, Loki's character is a whirlwind of contradiction. His cleverness and cunning often save the gods from predicaments. It was Loki who tricked the dwarf Brokkr into creating Mjolnir, Thor's hammer. It was Loki's shape-shifting and trickery that allowed the gods to reclaim priceless treasures. He is charming, intelligent, and often indispensable. But his defining nature is mischief, a love of disruption for its own sake, and a profound lack of concern for consequence. He is the god of the unintended outcome. The pranks he pulls, the schemes he hatches, almost always spiral out of his control, forcing the gods to clean up a mess far greater than the initial offense. In this golden age, he is tolerated. He is the court jester, the problematic friend, the source of both frustration and solutions. But the Völva's prophecy has now cast a dark shadow over him. We now know, and Odin now knows, that Loki's chaotic nature will eventually curdle into true malice. His envy and spite will lead him to orchestrate the death of Baldr, the most beloved of the gods. And this act, this final, unforgivable transgression, will be the straw that breaks the fragile peace. It will cause the gods to finally turn on him, to bind him in a cave to await the end of all things. His role as the unsettling trickster will end, and his role as a bound, vengeful harbinger of Ragnarok will begin, setting the stage for the next, darker chapter of our story. The Völva's prophecy, delivered to a burdened Odin, did not speak of abstract forces or nameless shadows. Norse mythology is rarely so vague. Instead, it spoke of specific agents of destruction, of characters whose very existence was a threat to the cosmic order the Aesir had so carefully constructed. And to understand these figures, we must turn our attention back to the great catalyst of chaos himself, Loki. While residing in Asgard as Odin's blood brother, Loki also maintained a secret life in Jotunheim, the realm of the giants. There, he took a consort, a giantess named Angerboda, a name which chillingly translates to "she who brings sorrow." From this union of trickster god and sorrowful giantess, 3 children were born. These were not gods, nor were they simple monsters. They were unique, powerful beings who embodied the most terrifying aspects of chaos, and their destinies were inextricably woven into the final fate of the gods. The prophecy spoke of them, and it was this knowledge that led the gods of Asgard to take drastic and ultimately futile measures to control the uncontrollable. The first of these children was a wolf, not merely a creature of the wild, but a being of terrifying potential, named Fenrir. The gods heard the prophecies surrounding him, that this wolf would grow to an immense size and was fated to be the death of the Allfather Odin himself. In a move that mixes caution with a fatal dose of hubris, the gods decided to bring the pup to Asgard, to raise him under their watchful eyes where they could control his growth and nature. This would prove to be a profound miscalculation. Fenrir grew at an astonishing rate, his size and strength increasing by the day until he was a fearsome spectacle that instilled terror in all but one of the gods. Only Tyr, the god of law and heroic glory, possessed the courage to continue feeding the monstrous wolf.
Seeing the prophecy unfolding before their very eyes, the gods knew they could not allow Fenrir to roam free. They had to bind him. But to do so without appearing treacherous, a violation of the codes of honor that governed their realm, they framed it as a game, a test of his legendary strength. They forged the mightiest chain they could imagine, a fetter named Leidinga. They presented it to Fenrir, challenging him to test his power against it. Fenrir, full of youthful pride and confident in his own might, agreed. With a single, mighty flex, he shattered Leidinga to pieces. Unsettled, the gods set to work again, this time forging a chain twice as strong, which they named Dromi. Again, they presented it as a challenge, praising Fenrir's previous feat and daring him to break this even greater chain. If I can break this, Fenrir reasoned, my fame will be known throughout the 9 realms. He allowed himself to be bound, and though it took more effort, he struggled with such ferocity that Dromi too shattered, the fragments flying across the landscape. Now the gods were truly desperate. They turned not to their own smithing, but to the master craftsmen of the cosmos, the dwarves of Svartalfheim. They commissioned a fetter that would be forged not from metal, but from paradox and magic itself. The dwarves created Gleipnir, the deceiver. It was as thin and smooth as a silken ribbon, but it was fashioned from 6 impossible ingredients: the sound of a cat's footfall, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the sinews of a bear, the breath of a fish, and the spittle of a bird. The gods brought this silken ribbon to Fenrir on an island, once again proposing their game. But Fenrir was no fool. He looked at the thin, magical ribbon and suspicion grew in his heart. "This flimsy ribbon holds no glory for me to break," he said, "unless it is crafted with trickery and magic. If you bind me with this so that I cannot free myself, you will leave me here, and I will not expect any help from you. I do not wish to be bound by it." The gods taunted him, calling him a coward, but Fenrir held firm. He proposed a compromise born of a deep, animalistic sense of honor and betrayal. "I will allow you to bind me with Gleipnir," he declared, "but only if one of you will place your hand in my mouth, as a pledge of good faith that there is no treachery involved." A chilling silence fell over the gods. They looked at one another, each knowing the price of this pledge. If the ribbon held, the hand would be lost. None would volunteer. None, that is, except the one who had always shown him courage, Tyr. With grim determination, the god of law and justice stepped forward and placed his right hand between the wolf's powerful jaws. The other gods then bound Fenrir with Gleipnir. The wolf strained, heaved, and thrashed with all his might, but the magical, paradoxical ribbon only drew tighter. The more he struggled, the more impossible his escape became. When Fenrir realized he was utterly trapped by magic and deceit, he snapped his jaws shut, severing Tyr's hand at the wrist. The gods, all but Tyr, let out a great laugh of relief, their fear momentarily forgotten in the triumph of their success. But the price was steep. They had maintained order through deception, and the god of honor had paid for it with his hand. They dragged the bound and howling Fenrir to a remote location, chained him to a great rock, and wedged a sword in his mouth to prop his jaws agape. And there he remains, filled with a burning hatred for the gods who betrayed him, waiting for the day of Ragnarok, when all bonds will be broken. The second child of Loki and Angerboda was a serpent, Jörmungandr. Fearing its potential as much as Fenrir's, Odin did not wait for it to grow. In a proactive attempt to remove the threat, he took the young serpent and cast it into the great ocean that encircles Midgard, the realm of men. This act of banishment, however, did not solve the problem. It merely postponed it and gave it room to grow to a truly cosmic scale. In the endless depths of the sea, Jörmungandr grew and grew until it was so impossibly long that it could encircle the entire world, grasping its own tail in its mouth. From then on, it was known as the Midgard Serpent, or the World Serpent. Its existence is a constant, latent threat to the world of humanity. Its thrashing can cause tidal waves and storms, but its true destiny is tied to Odin's son, Thor.
The thunder god and the world serpent are archetypal, fated nemeses. Their mutual hatred is a cornerstone of the mythology. This enmity is best captured in the famous tale of Thor's fishing trip with the giant Hymir. Seeking a worthy challenge, Thor ventures out into the deep ocean, using the head of an ox as bait on a massive hook. He casts his line, and Jormungandr bites. What follows is a terrifying tug-of-war between the strongest of the gods and the largest creature in the cosmos. Thor pulls with all his might, his feet crashing through the bottom of the boat and finding purchase on the ocean floor itself. He hauls the serpent's monstrous, venom-dripping head up from the depths, and the two mortal enemies stare at each other with pure, unadulterated hatred. Thor raises his hammer, Mjolnir, for the killing blow, but the giant Hymir, pale with terror at the sight, cuts the fishing line. The serpent sinks back into the depths, and the final confrontation is delayed. But the meeting seals their fate. They are destined to meet one last time on the battlefield of Ragnarok. And finally, the third child, a daughter named Hel. Like her siblings, Odin sought to neutralize her by giving her a domain to rule. He cast her down into the primordial realm of Niflheim and gave her authority over one of the 9 realms, which came to be named after her, Helheim. He decreed that all who died of sickness, old age, or any cause other than glorious battle would be sent to her realm. Her appearance reflects her domain. She is described as being half a beautiful, living woman and half a blue-black, decaying corpse. Her realm, Helheim, is not the fiery pit of punishment seen in other religions. It is a grey, gloomy, and monotonous place. It is cold, damp, and surrounded by a river that cannot be crossed. It is a realm of profound stillness and quiet despair. Hel rules it as a grim, implacable queen. By placing her there, Odin thought he had contained her, but in doing so, he created a powerful kingdom of the dead, an army of shades that, when the time comes, will rise with Loki to march against the gods. Each of Odin's attempts to control the children of chaos only succeeded in placing them into the precise positions from which they would launch their final assault. The Volva's prophecy foretold these beings, but it also foretold a specific event that would serve as the point of no return. It was a crime so grievous it would sunder the bonds of kinship among the gods and make Loki's position in Asgard utterly untenable. This was the death of Baldr. Baldr the Beautiful was the son of Odin and Frigg, and he was the most beloved of all the gods. He was the god of light, purity, joy, and innocence. Where he walked, beauty bloomed. His presence in Asgard was a living symbol of the perfection and grace of the Golden Age. He was, in essence, the embodiment of everything the gods cherished and sought to protect. The tragedy begins when Baldr becomes plagued by terrible nightmares, premonitions that foretell his own imminent death. A gloom falls over Asgard. The death of their most beloved member seems unthinkable, and it fills the gods with a sense of dread. Determined to protect her son, his mother, the goddess Frigg, embarks on a monumental quest. She travels through all the 9 realms and extracts a solemn oath from every single thing in existence never to harm Baldr. She takes this oath from fire and water, from iron and all other metals, from stones and earth, from trees and diseases, from beasts, birds and serpents. Every element and entity in the cosmos swears not to touch her son. With this seemingly absolute protection secured, a new pastime arises among the gods in Asgard. For sport, they gather and test Baldr's invulnerability. They hurl darts, stones, and axes at him. They swing their swords and watch with joyous laughter as every object veers away or bounces harmlessly off of him. It is a game that reaffirms their sense of security and celebrates the triumph of Frigg's love. All of the gods partake in this joyous spectacle, except one, Baldr's own brother, the blind god Höder, who stands aside, unable to see, to aim, or to witness the glory. This scene of divine mirth and invincibility stirs a bitter jealousy in the heart of Loki. He sees an opportunity for the ultimate act of mischief. Taking the disguise of an old woman, he approaches Frigg and, through cunning conversation, pries from her a single, fatal secret. "Did all things truly swear an oath to spare Baldr?" the disguised Loki asks. Frigg, proud of her work, confirms it. "All things," she says, "except for one little shrub that grows west of Valhalla. It is the mistletoe. It seemed too young and harmless to me to demand an oath from." With this information, Loki slips away. He finds the mistletoe, plucks it, and fashions it into a sharp, deadly dart. He then returns to the field where the gods are playing their game and approaches the blind god Hödr. "Why do you not also throw something at your brother to honor him?" Loki asks. Hödr replies that he has no weapon, and, more importantly, he cannot see where to aim. "Do as the others do," Loki says with false kindness. "I will guide your hand." He places the mistletoe dart into Hödr's hand and directs his aim. Hödr, innocent and unknowing, throws the dart. It flies true, piercing Baldr, who falls to the ground, dead. A stunned, horrific silence descends upon the gods. Their laughter turns to anguish. They are so shocked they cannot speak, so filled with grief they cannot weep. They know who is responsible. They look at Loki, and for the first time, they see not a trickster, but a murderer. The game is over. The golden age of the Aesir is finished. The prophecy has begun to unfold, and the first and most painful blow has been struck. The death of Baldr was an act of murder, but Loki's final act of malice was yet to come. In their grief, the gods made one last, desperate attempt to reverse fate. The god Hermodr the Bold volunteers to undertake the perilous journey to the underworld. He mounts Odin's 8-legged steed, Sleipnir, and rides for 9 nights through darkness until he reaches the gates of Helheim. There he pleads with the goddess Hel, begging her to release Baldr back to the world of the living, explaining that all of creation weeps for him. Hel, in her grim wisdom, agrees to a test. "If all things in the world," she declares, "both living and dead, weep for him, then he may return to you. But if anyone refuse, he shall remain with me." Hermodr returns with the news, and the gods dispatch messengers across the 9 realms. And everything weeps. The stones weep, the trees weep, the metals weep. All of humanity and all of the gods weep for the loss of the beautiful god. The bargain seems won. But the messengers find one lone giantess sitting in a cave. Her name is Thurk, which means thanks, a name dripping with cruel irony. They ask her to weep for Baldr. She replies with scorn, "Thurk will weep dry tears for Baldr's burial. Let Hel hold what she has." The giantess, of course, was Loki in disguise. With this final act, he single-handedly ensures that Baldr remains trapped in the underworld. His crime is now complete, and the gods' tolerance for him is utterly extinguished. A furious hunt begins. Loki, knowing the gods' wrath is upon him, flees and hides in the mountains. There, he builds a house with 4 doors so he can watch for danger from all directions. During the day, in his paranoia, he transforms himself into a salmon and hides in the waters of a nearby waterfall. The gods, led by the wisdom of Kvasir, track him down. Thor, with his unmatched strength and quickness, wades into the river and physically catches the slippery, thrashing salmon in his bare hand. Loki's freedom is over. The punishment that the gods devise is one of the most brutal and terrifying in all of mythology, reserved for the one who has brought them so much pain. They drag Loki to a dark cave. They capture 2 of Loki's other sons, Vali and Nafi. In a horrifying act of retribution, the gods transform Vali into a ravenous wolf who then turns and tears his own brother, Nafi, to pieces. The gods then take the still warm entrails of the murdered Nafi and use them as bonds to tie Loki to 3 great sharp-edged stones. As a final act, the entrails magically turn to iron, creating an unbreakable chain. But the torture is not over. The giantess Skadi, seeking her own vengeance against Loki, places a massive, venomous serpent on a rock directly above his face. The serpent's venom is to drip down onto him, causing unimaginable, ceaseless agony. In a singular, poignant display of loyalty, Loki's wife, Sigyn, remains by his side. She holds a bowl above his face, catching the burning venom before it can touch him. But the bowl eventually fills, and she must turn away to empty it. In those brief moments, the venom drips onto Loki's face. He writhes in such torment that his convulsions shake the entire world. To the people of Midgard, these are the events they know as earthquakes. And so the great trickster, the agent of chaos, is neutralized. He lies bound in darkness and agony, his heart turning from mischief to pure black hatred. He is no longer a part of Asgard, but its sworn, tortured enemy, waiting for the day when the final great earthquakes of Ragnarok will shatter his iron bonds and set him free to lead the armies of the dead against the gods who imprisoned him. The stage is now fully set, the pieces are in place. The long, cold winter is about to begin. With the death of Baldr, the very light of Asgard has been extinguished. With the binding of Loki, the agent of chaos has been transformed into a font of pure, focused vengeance, his suffering a constant, seismic tremor beneath the foundations of the world. The long, prosperous age of the gods, however fraught with Odin's prophetic anxiety it may have been, is now definitively over. What follows is not an immediate, fiery cataclysm, but a slow, agonizing descent into darkness and decay. A series of cosmic death throes that serve as the unmistakable signs that the end foretold for so long is finally at hand. These are not random events. They are the specific, sequential warnings foretold by the vulva, the necessary precursors to the final battle. The first and most impactful of these signs to be felt on the mortal plane of Midgard is the Fimbulwinter, the mighty winter. This is not an ordinary winter of hardship, not a season that can be endured with stoicism and foresight. It is a supernatural and unrelenting event that defies the natural order. For 3 consecutive years, there is no summer, no spring to thaw the ground, no autumn to signal a coming rest. There is only winter, feeding upon itself, growing ever stronger. The prophecy speaks of snow driving from all directions, of relentless, bone-deep frosts that turn the very soil to iron, and of biting, piercing winds that offer no reprieve. The sun, though still in the sky, becomes a pale, impotent disk, offering no warmth and no hope. The world is shrouded in a perpetual, grim twilight, a landscape of endless ice and snow. This is more than a climatic event. It is a fundamental breakdown of the world's machinery, a sign that the very mechanisms of life are failing. The primary impact of Fimbulwinter is the utter and complete collapse of human society. To understand the depth of this catastrophe, one must understand the pillars upon which Norse society was built. It was a world governed by strict codes of conduct, chief among them the bonds of kinship, or fransemi. Your family was your fortress, your first and last line of defense in a harsh world. Equally important was the concept of hospitality, gestrisni, the sacred duty to provide shelter and sustenance to a traveller, and binding it all together were oaths, idia, sworn words that held the power of unbreakable law. The Fimbulwinter erodes and then utterly shatters every one of these pillars. In a world without harvest, without warmth, and without hope, the social fabric dissolves. The Poetic Edda describes this period with chilling clarity. Brothers will fight and kill each other, and sisters' sons will defile kinship. It is a time when the gnawing ache of hunger overrides all loyalty. Oaths are broken for a crust of bread. The stranger at the door is no longer a guest to be sheltered, but a rival for scarce resources, a threat to be eliminated. Families turn on one another, the strong preying on the weak. Villages that once stood as communities become isolated pockets of paranoia and violence. The very concept of humanity is stripped away, leaving behind desperate creatures engaged in a lawless, amoral struggle for survival. Midgard, the realm the gods had so carefully constructed from the eyebrows of Ymir,
and which Thor had so diligently protected, essentially devours itself from within. It is a world already dead, its inhabitants turned into little more than starving animals, even before the armies of giants and the dead arrive to claim the ruins. For the gods in Asgard, this 3-year winter is a constant, agonizing reminder of their impending doom. Every gust of wind that howls through the halls of Valhalla, every endless night, is a tick of the cosmic clock counting down to their demise. They are powerless to stop it. Thor cannot smash the winter with his hammer. Odin cannot outwit it with his wisdom. It is a state of being, a necessary and painful stage of the prophecy that they must endure. This period serves to weaken the resolve of all but the most stalwart, to strip away all illusions of hope, and to set a bleak, desolate stage for the final act. It is a long, cold, silent wait for a war that everyone knows is coming. As the Fimbulwinter reaches its horrifying climax, the second great sign appears in the darkened skies, a terror reserved for the gods and the cosmos itself. Since the dawn of time, 2 mighty wolves, said to be offspring of the monstrous Fenrir, have been relentlessly pursuing the celestial bodies. These are not earthly wolves, they are cosmic predators. The wolf named Skull, which can be translated as treachery or mockery, has hunted the sun, a divine entity personified as the goddess Sol, who drives her fiery chariot across the sky each day. His brother, Hati, or He Who Hates, has chased the moon, the god Mani, on his nightly journey. This eternal chase is the very engine of day and night. The rising and setting of the sun and moon are not, in the Norse mind, simple mechanics of a celestial sphere. They are a desperate, daily flight from annihilation. The sun goddess Sol must drive her horses with all her speed to stay ahead of the snapping jaws of Skull. The moon god Mani must guide his chariot through the night with equal urgency to evade the hateful pursuit of Hati. The terror of a solar or lunar eclipse, from this perspective, was profound. It was the moment the wolf nearly caught its prey, a terrifying glimpse of the day the chase would finally end. Now, at the end of the mighty winter, that day has come. Whether strengthened by the world's descent into chaos, or perhaps simply because the threads of fate have decreed it, the wolves are now fast enough and powerful enough to end the pursuit. Skjöll, in a final, terrible lunge that blots out the sky, seizes the sun goddess and her chariot and swallows them whole. Hati, in turn, finally catches his hated prey and devours the moon. The consequences are immediate and absolute. The world is plunged into an abyss of profound and starless darkness. The last guiding lights in the cosmos, the symbols of order, time, and hope, are extinguished. This is not merely a physical darkness, but a metaphysical one. It represents the triumph of chaos over the last vestiges of cosmic order. The sun and moon were symbols of predictability, of the cycles of planting and harvest, of the very passage of time. Their destruction signifies that time, as it has been known, has ceased to function. The world is now untethered from its natural rhythm, floating in a black, timeless void, a state of uncreation that mirrors the primordial void of Ginnungagap from which it was born. For the last starving remnants of humanity in Midgard, it is the final, incomprehensible terror. For the gods, it is an unambiguous signal. With the sky now black, there is nothing left to wait for. The final stage of the prophecy has been triggered, and the physical destruction of the cosmos can now begin. The third and final sign is the one that shatters the very foundations of the world and releases the bound agents of its destruction. With the cosmos shrouded in darkness and weakened by the long winter, the great tree Yggdrasil begins to tremble. The Poetic Edda states that the ash Yggdrasil shakes and trembles its branches. This is not a localized event. It is the entire axis of the universe, the pillar connecting all of existence, groaning in agony. This cosmic tremor, the death shudder of the world tree, sets off a chain reaction of catastrophic earthquakes across all the 9 realms. Mountains, ancient and unmoving, crumble into dust. The very earth splits open, creating vast, gaping chasms. and most importantly, the prophecy is fulfilled. Every chain, every fetter, every bond, whether forged of iron or of magic, is violently shattered. Deep in his subterranean prison, Loki feels the earth heave. The iron bonds, once the living entrails of his murdered son Nafi, snap. For the first time in ages he is able to move. He rises, no longer the cunning trickster of Asgard's court, but a being consumed by centuries of torment and an all-encompassing desire for vengeance. The venom has carved his face into a mask of pure hatred. His first act as a free being will be to travel to Helheim, to muster the legions of the dishonorable dead and prepare them for war against the gods who bound him. On a remote, lonely island, the impossible happens. Gleipnir, the silken ribbon forged from paradox, the fetter that could not be broken, gives way. The magic that held it together dissolves in the face of the universe's own dissolution. With a roar that shakes the heavens, the great wolf Fenrir is unbound. His immense jaws, which have been pried open by a sword for an age, are now free to work their prophesied destruction. He will begin his rampage across the darkened world, a force of pure annihilation, his lower jaw scraping the dead earth and his upper jaw touching the starless sky, devouring everything in his path. And in the depths of the ocean encircling Midgard, the world serpent Jörmungandr is roused from its coil by the violent convulsions of the earth. In a furious rage, it begins to writhe and thrash, churning the sea into a frenzy. Unimaginable tidal waves and floods sweep across the lands of men, drowning what little life remained after Fimbulwinter. The serpent releases its own tail from its mouth and begins to make its way toward the shore, its colossal form displacing the very oceans, its head spewing deadly venom that poisons the air and the water of the world. The Völva's prophecy stated that at this moment, the moment the world shakes and the monsters are unleashed, the ever-vigilant guardian of the Bifrost Bridge will see them coming. The enemies of the gods are now on the move, from every corner of the shattered cosmos. And so, Heimdallr, the sleepless watchman, standing at the edge of a dying Asgard, raises the Gjallarhorn to his lips. He takes a great, world-shaking breath and sounds the horn. Its piercing, urgent call, a sound not heard since the dawn of time, echoes throughout the 9 realms. It is a sound of pure, final alarm, a declaration that the war at the end of the world has begun. In Asgard, the Aesir know instantly what it means. In Jotunheim, the giants rally to the call to war, boarding their dreadful ship Naglfar, made from the fingernails of the dead. In Muspelheim, the fire giant Surtur gathers his flaming legions. In his great hall of Valhalla, Odin hears the horn and knows that the day he has foreseen for countless ages has finally arrived. He will consult the wise, severed head of Mimir one last time, not for a way to win, but perhaps for a final piece of strategic wisdom. Then he will don his golden eagle helmet, grasp his unfailing spear Gungnir, and lead the assembled champions of the gods, the Einherjar, out of the gates of Valhalla and onto the fields of battle. The signs are complete. The long prelude is over. The armies of gods, giants, and the dead are now gathering for the final, world-ending conflict, the Twilight of the Gods. The piercing call of the Gjallarhorn has done its work. The sound, a declaration of total war, has ripped through the fabric of the 9 realms, and from every corner of the dying cosmos, the actors in this final drama converge upon their appointed stage. This is the battlefield of Vígríðr, a name that translates to the plain where battle surges. The prophecies describe it as a vast, desolate expanse, 100 leagues in every direction, a field large enough to contain the collision of gods, giants, and the dead. It is here that the threads of fate, spun so long ago, will finally be drawn together in a single violent cataclysm. From the east, the forces of Jotunheim arrive. Their great ship Naglfar finally breaks free from its moorings in the world-shaking flood. This is no vessel of wood or iron. It is a thing of grotesque horror, constructed entirely from the untrimmed fingernails and toenails of the human dead.
It is a symbol of societal neglect, of rituals unobserved, a grim testament to the chaos that has consumed Midgard. At its helm stands the giant Hrym, steering this dreadful ship toward Vígríðr, its decks crowded with frost giants, their hearts filled with an ancient hatred for the gods of Asgard. From the darkened south, the sky itself tears open. Through this rift rides Surtur, the fire giant, ruler of the primordial realm of Muspelheim. He is a being of immense power, ancient beyond the gods themselves, and he leads his flaming legions, the sons of Muspelheim, onto the field. Surtur wields a sword that blazes with a terrifying light, described as being brighter than the sun. This is not a metaphor. In a world whose sun has been devoured, his blade is now the brightest and most terrible light in existence, a light of pure, unmaking fire. Where his army rides, the very earth is scorched and turned to ash. From the underworld, a second ship arrives, carrying the dead from Helheim. And at its helm is the figure whose treachery began this final chapter, Loki. No longer the charismatic trickster of Asgard's court, he is now a being of pure vengeance, his face a mask of torment, leading an army of the pale, dishonored dead against his former blood brother, and the gods who bound him. And finally, two forces arrive that are not armies, but cataclysms unto themselves. The great wolf Fenrir, his bonds shattered, now rampages across the land. He is a spectacle of absolute annihilation, his immense jaws agape, the lower jaw scraping along the dead earth, the upper jaw touching the blackened sky, devouring everything in his path. His eyes burn with a cold fire, and his howl is the sound of the end of all things. Alongside him, the world serpent, Jörmungandr, has heaved its colossal form from the sea onto the plain, its massive body coiling like living mountains, all the while spewing a black, corrosive venom that poisons the air and boils the water, rendering the very battlefield a toxic wasteland. Against this terrifying onslaught, the forces of order make their stand. From the 540 gates of Valhalla, the army of the Einherjar pours forth. These are the chosen spirits of the greatest human warriors who have died in battle throughout the ages, hand-picked by the Valkyries. For centuries they have feasted and fought in Odin's hall, training for this one, final day. They are a shining, glorious host, armed and armoured, their loyalty absolute, a legion of the best of humanity standing with the gods. And at their head rides Odin, the All-Father. He is a magnificent, terrible sight, clad in his golden eagle helmet, wielding his unerring spear Gungnir, and mounted on his 8-legged steed Sleipnir. He is not riding to victory, but to his fate. He is the king leading his subjects into a battle he knows he cannot survive, a perfect embodiment of the Norse ideal of tragic, defiant heroism. With him are the great gods of the Aesir, Thor, his face grim, his knuckles white around the handle of his hammer Mjolnir, his eyes scanning the horizon for the great serpent. Tyr, the one-handed god of law, a living symbol of the sacrifice required to maintain order, ready to make one final stand. And Freyr, the shining god of peace and plenty, now forced into the role of a warrior, his heart heavy with the knowledge that he faces the Lord of Destruction without his greatest weapon. The armies are assembled. The board is set. The twilight of the gods begins. The battle erupts not as a series of orderly clashes, but as a maelstrom of chaos and fury. But within this chaos, the prophecies must be fulfilled. Fated adversaries seek each other out across the surging plain, drawn together by destinies woven at the beginning of time. Odin, as the king and leader, knows his duty. He charges directly towards his designated doom, the monstrous wolf Fenrir. This is not a foolhardy act, but a necessary one. The king must face the greatest threat. On Sleipnir, the swiftest horse in all the realms, he is a blur of motion, a flash of gold and spear light against the encroaching, all-consuming shadow of the wolf. The Einherjar charge with him, a wave of valiant spirits crashing against the wolf's immense form. but their spears and swords are like toothpicks against a mountain. Fenrir is a force of nature, and his only focus is the Allfather. The confrontation is brief and terrifying. Odin, the god of wisdom, strategy, and magic, finds that none of his knowledge can unmake a fate that has already been written. He fights with all the power of the chief of the gods, but the wolf, the embodiment of unbound chaos, is simply too vast, too powerful. The sagas describe the moment with stark finality. Fenrir's great jaws, which span from the earth to the sky, open and swallow the Allfather whole. His horse, his armour, his spear, all gone in an instant. The greatest of the gods, the seeker of wisdom and the bringer of order, is the first major casualty of the final war. The loss is catastrophic, sending a wave of despair through the ranks of the gods and the Einherjar. But there is no time for grief, only for vengeance. Stepping through the chaos is one of Odin's sons, Vígríðr, known as the Silent God. He is a figure of immense strength, second only to Thor, and his destiny is intertwined with his father's. Throughout time, cobblers have followed a tradition of cutting off small scraps of leather from the toes and heels of the shoes they make. These seemingly useless scraps have been magically gathered to construct a single, massive shoe for Vígríðr. It is a shoe of impossible thickness and durability, made from the collective, unconscious efforts of humanity. Vígríðr, now wearing this enchanted shoe, confronts the wolf that has just slain his father. He strides forward and places his booted foot upon Fenrir's lower jaw, holding it to the ground. With his hands, he grasps the wolf's upper jaw, and in a display of cosmic, vengeful strength, he tears the monster's mouth apart, ripping him in two. The doom of Odin is avenged, but the cost is immeasurable. The king of the gods is dead. As Odin falls, another epic confrontation reaches its climax. All across the battlefield, Thor, the champion, has been carving a path of destruction through the ranks of the giants, but his eyes have been searching for only one foe. He finally meets Jörmungandr, the Midgard serpent. This is the culmination of their eternal animosity. The god of thunder, protector of humanity's realm, versus the serpent that has grown to encircle it. Their battle is a clash of primal forces that shakes the dying world to its core. The sky, already dark, is split by furious flashes of lightning as Thor swings Mjolnir. The serpent rears its colossal head, spewing rivers of black venom that poison the land and air. It is a brutal, earth-shattering duel. Thor, in a final heroic surge, summons all of his divine strength. He swings his hammer with such force that it crashes down upon the serpent's monstrous skull, crushing it completely. The great world serpent, the child of Loki that has threatened the stability of the cosmos since its birth, is finally slain. Thor stands victorious over the corpse of his greatest enemy. But the victory is tragically short-lived. The serpent, in its death throes, has covered him in its deadly venom. The god of thunder, weakened from the fight, staggers back 9 paces, a number of deep, mystical significance in Norse mythology. And on the 9th step, he too collapses and dies, succumbing to the poison. The great champion of Asgard and Midgard is gone. The protector has fallen, and the world is now defenseless. The loss of the 2 greatest gods sends a shockwave through the Aesir, but the fated duels continue unabated. Freyr, the radiant god of peace and fertility, finds himself facing the leader of the fire giants, the mighty Surtur. This is a confrontation steeped in tragic irony. Freyr, a symbol of the bounty and joy of the Golden Age, is now forced to fight the very embodiment of cosmic destruction. Worse, he must do so without his greatest weapon. The audience remembers his story. He gave away his magical, self-fighting sword to win the love of the giantess Gerda. It was a choice made for love in a time of peace. But now, at the end of all things, that choice has returned to seal his doom. He fights with the bravery of a god, using the antler of a stag as a makeshift weapon. But against Surtur, whose very being is primordial fire and whose sword outshines the lost sun, bravery is not enough.
Freyr is one of the first of the great gods to fall, his death symbolizing that the peaceful, prosperous world he represented cannot survive the coming conflagration. Elsewhere on the plain, the two great opposites of the Norse pantheon finally meet. Heimdallr, the white god, the guardian of order and the ever-vigilant watchman, confronts his nemesis, Loki. The agent of chaos, his face twisted with the memory of his long torment, now faces the one who stood as the primary sentinel against him. Their battle is personal, vicious, and filled with the weight of their ancient animosity. They are perfectly matched in their opposition, and the prophecy holds true. They mortally wound each other. Heimdallr, with his dying breath, fulfills his final duty by eliminating the ultimate catalyst of chaos. But he dies in the process. The watchman and the trickster, whose fates were always intertwined, negate each other at the end of the world. And a similar fate befalls the last of the great duelists. The one-handed god of law, Tyr, strides forward to meet his own prophesied doom, the monstrous hound Garma, the guardian of the gate of Helheim, now unleashed upon the world. The god who sacrificed his hand to bind the wolf Fenrir for the sake of cosmic law, now gives his life to destroy another monstrous canine. They too kill each other. Tyr's story is one of complete, unflinching sacrifice for the cause of order, a duty he fulfills to the very last. With the great champions of Asgard now dead, Odin, Thor, Freyr, Heimdallr, Tyr, the battle is effectively over. The Einherjar, leaderless, are overwhelmed. The forces of chaos have won the day, but their victory is a hollow one, for their purpose was not to rule the world, but to unmake it. Now the final act of destruction begins. The fire giant Surtur, his fated adversary Freyr now slain, stands unopposed amidst the wreckage of the battlefield. He lifts his blazing sword high. He casts its all-consuming fire across the earth. The flames leap from realm to realm. Midgard, the world of men, is incinerated. Asgard, the fortress of the gods, burns and crumbles. The fire even reaches the great world tree, and Yggdrasil, the pillar of the cosmos, is finally engulfed in a roaring, final conflagration. The stars, which had remained in the blackened sky, now vanish into the smoke and chaos. The earth, scorched and blackened, stripped of all life and memory, trembles one last time. And then, with a final shuddering groan, it begins to sink beneath the boiling, poisoned waves of the sea. The noise of battle fades, the roars of monsters and the shouts of gods are extinguished. All that remains is the sound of hissing steam and bubbling water. And then, that too fades. There is only darkness, water, and a profound, absolute silence. The 9 realms are gone. The age of gods and men is over. The prophecy has been fulfilled. The twilight has come. For a time that cannot be measured, there is nothing. The fire has been quenched by the sea, and the sea itself is a calm, dark, and lifeless expanse. The 9 realms are gone. The great tree Yggdrasil has fallen. The age of the old gods is over. This is the great silence at the end of all things, the final fulfillment of the Völva's prophecy. And yet this is precisely where the Norse conception of doom diverges most profoundly from many other eschatologies. The end is not a final judgment, nor is it an eternal void. It is a necessary purification, a cosmic reset. Ragnarok was not just a destruction, it was a cleansing. Slowly, inexorably, a new process begins. The Völuspá describes it with beautiful simplicity. She sees arise, a second time, earth from the ocean, eternally green. Out of the still, dark waters, a new land begins to emerge. This is not the old Midgard, scarred by the conflicts of men and gods. This new world is vibrant, fertile, and pure. Waterfalls flow, eagles cry over the mountains once more, and the fields begin to grow with unsown crops. It is a world reborn, washed clean of all the old enmities, betrayals, and sorrows.
The venom of Jörmungandr has been diluted, and the ashes left by Surtur's fire now serve as a nutrient-rich foundation for new life. And upon this new green earth, the survivors begin to appear. It is not a great host, but a small, significant handful of the divine, their survival preordained and symbolic. From the wreckage of the old Asgard, two of Odin's sons emerge: Vígríðr, the silent god who avenged his father by slaying Fenrir, and his brother Vali, who was born for the express purpose of avenging Baldr's death. Their survival represents the continuation of Odin's lineage and the enduring power of justice and retribution, the forces that, even in a doomed world, sought to balance the scales. They are soon joined by the sons of Thor, Magni, whose name means mighty, and Modi, whose name means wrathful. These two sons inherit their father's most prized possession, the hammer Mjolnir. The survival of Thor's legacy is critical. While Thor himself, the great protector, had to fall, his strength and his righteous anger against the forces of chaos endure through his children. The presence of Mjolnir in the new world is a powerful symbol that this reborn world, while peaceful, will not be defenseless. But perhaps the most poignant and significant return is that of the two gods whose deaths triggered the entire cataclysm. From the now empty realm of Helheim, both Baldr the Beautiful and his blind brother Höder emerge, freed from the underworld by the destruction of the old cosmos. Their return is a profound statement of reconciliation and renewal. Baldr, the symbol of light and innocence, is restored. Höder, who was an unwitting instrument of Loki's malice, is now freed from his guilt. Their presence together in the new world signifies that the original crime has been absolved. The wound that led to the world's death has been healed, allowing this new age to begin without the baggage of old betrayals. These surviving gods, the sons of Odin and Thor, along with Baldr and Höder, gather on the plains of Yggdrasil, the shining plains where Asgard once stood, and they begin to speak of the past, remembering the great tales and sorrows of the world that was. And as they explore this new world, they make a remarkable discovery in the green grass. They find the golden game pieces, the very chess-like tablets that the Aesir had played with in their original golden age, before their innocence was lost. This discovery is laden with symbolic meaning. It is a direct link to their lost paradise, a sign that they have been given a second chance to begin again. The game can be reset. It suggests that this new age will be one of peace and joy, a return to the innocence that existed before the Volva delivered her terrible prophecy and set the tragedy in motion. Of course, a world needs more than just gods. The Völuspá tells us that during the final conflagration, two human beings managed to survive. They were not great warriors or kings, but a simple man and woman named Líf and Lífthrasir, names which translate to life and she who strives for life. They took refuge not in a fortress or a cave, but within the wood of the World Tree itself, in a place called Hodmimisholt. They slept through the destruction, nourished only by the morning dew. Now, as the new sun, the beautiful daughter of the old one, begins to shine, they emerge into the reborn world. From this single couple, humanity will be reborn, repopulating the new earth. This is a crucial element. The new world is not an empty divine garden. It is a world for mortals, a place for humanity to have a second chance, free from the cosmic conflicts and manipulations of the old gods. And what of the ultimate source of evil? The sources are not entirely clear, but the implication is powerful. The great dragon Nidhugger, who gnawed at the roots of Yggdrasil, is said to survive, carrying the corpses of the old world's evildoers away, perhaps signifying that evil and decay are eternal principles that can be purged but never entirely erased. However, the primary antagonists, Loki, Fenrir, Jörmungandr, Surtur, are all gone, their specific world-ending purpose fulfilled. The new world, therefore, is not a perfect utopia, but it is a world of immense hope. It is a world where a new, more just generation of gods,
can preside over a new, innocent humanity. The great tragedy has played out, and the cycle has been reset. The Norse worldview, so often characterized as grim and fatalistic, reveals its final surprising truth: that even in the face of an inescapable and violent doom, the ultimate promise is one of rebirth, renewal, and the enduring triumph of life itself. The end was never just an end, it was the beginning.
But the question is, what are we to make of this immense and brutal epic? What is the ultimate meaning of Ragnarok? The primary lesson, and the one that sets Norse mythology apart, is its profound embrace of a cyclical reality. Unlike the linear, one-time apocalypses found in many other theological frameworks, Ragnarok is not a final end. It is a necessary, albeit violent, part of an eternal cycle of destruction and rebirth. The world of the old gods was not sustainable. It was born with the seeds of its own destruction sown within it, in the form of Loki, in the form of the prophecy, in the form of the gods' own hubris and their sometimes deceitful attempts to forestall fate. The world had to be destroyed. The slate had to be wiped clean. The fire of Surtur and the waters of the flood were not merely instruments of ruin. They were agents of cosmic purification. The return of Baldr and Hördr is the ultimate proof of this. The original sin is forgiven, and a new world, founded on reconciliation, can begin. This worldview suggests a philosophy of profound resilience, a belief that even after the most complete and devastating loss, life, in some form, will always return. This powerful narrative of a twilight war and a world reborn has of course cast a long shadow over our own modern culture. Its influence on the fantasy genre is almost impossible to overstate. When J.R.R. Tolkien wrote of the great, world-changing battles of Middle-earth, he was drawing heavily from the heroic, doom-laden tone of his beloved Norse sagas. The concept of a fated final battle, the mournful nobility of heroes fighting for a cause they know is ultimately lost, the very archetypes of dwarves as master craftsmen and elves as ethereal beings, these are all echoes of the Norse cosmos. From the pages of comics to the landscapes of video games and the epic scores of composers like Richard Wagner, the themes of Ragnarok, of fated duels, monstrous wolves, and a world consumed by fire, have been reinterpreted and retold for generations. It is a testament to the raw archetypal power of the original myth. And so we are left with our final, thought-provoking question. We began by asking what Ragnarok meant to the Norse people. Perhaps the answer lies in its reflection of their own world. They lived in a harsh, often brutal reality, where even the strongest warrior or the most powerful king could be felled by a rival, by sickness, or by the simple, unsparing passage of time. They understood, in a way that our modern world often tries to forget, that all things, empires, gods, and people, are impermanent. Ragnarok, then, can be seen as a grand, cosmic metaphor for this inescapable truth. The gods, for all their power, were mortal. They were bound by destiny, just as humans are. And in this shared mortality, there is a powerful, unifying message. It suggests that true heroism is not found in achieving immortality or in cheating fate. True heroism, in the Norse worldview, is found in how one faces that inescapable fate. It is Odin riding out to meet the wolf he knows will devour him. It is Thor striding 9 paces before falling. It is the courage to stand against the inevitable, to fight for order and honor in a world you know is doomed to fall. It teaches that endings are not only about loss, but they are also about the meaning we forge in the face of them. And that even from the ashes of the most complete and total destruction, there is always the promise of a new, green world waiting to rise from the sea.